gods, multiverses, and a bald guy. This is the entire One Punch Man timeline, spanning from over 300 million years ago to now, and how it's all been building up towards the final fight of the series, Saitama versus God. Before man ruled the earth, there were dinosaurs, but amongst them were some pretty damn powerful ones, the Terror Lizard Clan. They were at war with the Deep Sea Kings and Subterranean Kings to take control of the world. However, like the fate of our own dinosaurs, they were mostly wiped out by a meteor, leaving just one lone survivor who was frozen through time, Ancient King. But he was killed by a meteor 300 million years later anyway, thanks to Tatsumaki. However, God's touch on Earth was already hinted back as far back as this era, as we can see on the mural built for him that prehistoric looking creatures were present, suggesting that he had an influence on the planet spanning back way before modern day. After millions upon millions of years of evolution, we finally enter a world we're a bit more familiar with. But before we can get to Saitama beating up the bad guys, Amai Mask explained that the world's been going through many eras of evolution. In the past, people fought against each other for land until the population decreased to the point where they prioritized helping future generations, leading to the first era of change. But due to the aftermath of all the wars, the world itself suffered from climate change, causing a rise in sea level, erosion, and environmental toxicity. This resulted in the second era of change, forcing the population to migrate to a single landmass, which is the one we see in the story. This also caused Dr. Genus to create his evolution theory 55 years ago, aged just 15, as he believed humanity had to grow quicker and stronger with the power of science, bringing us to the current third era of change, one where monsters became more dangerous and more frequent thanks to Saitama attracting God to their dimension. This is when Genus created the House of Evolution and began to learn about God and the limiters he had bestowed upon humanity, making it his mission to find a way to break them. Meanwhile, the hero world began taking shape with characters like Bang and Bomb being in their prime, whilst Dr. Bufoy and Kusuno studied robotics. Tatsumaki was also held captive at the Tsukiyomi facility after being sold off by her parents due to being experimented on due to her powerful Esper abilities. But she is saved by Blast, who just so happened to free her whilst on a quest to retrieve a cube containing the power of God. Moving forward a few more years and Saitama is born. His impact on the planet was almost instantaneous whether he knew it or not, as sometime after Saitama's birth, Boros was told of a prophecy that he would find a worthy opponent on Earth. Thus, he began his journey to indulge in a battle that he could enjoy against a powerful being. Furthermore, the Super Fight tournament was won by martial artist Goketsu 11 years before the start of the series. However, he later lost to Monster King Orochi, who was recently created by Psychos after many failed attempts to create a limitless being, leading Goketsu to consume monster cells and join the Monster Association in their infancy. This was the first step towards a war that would put the entire universe at risk of Saitama unleashing his full power. But before we get too ahead of ourselves, 4 years prior to the story, Genesis' family were killed by the Mad Cyborg, beginning his revenge-filled journey. Then 1 year after that, Saitama began his career as a hero, defeating Crablante. In doing so, he also inspired the creation of the Hero Association by saving its founder's grandson. Following this, Saitama set out on his journey of what, unbeknownst to him, would result in him removing the limiter God placed upon him, as his body experienced the point of death over and over again, becoming the human that went against God. He did this by doing his grueling training regime every day, as well as battling monsters, all whilst refusing to use the air conditioning to help regulate his body's temperature, as it would have been an unnatural outside occurrence, and relying on such things wouldn't let his body progress. On his heroic journey, he'd saved the likes of King from monsters and even met Tatsumaki for the first time, calling her a brat. It was around this time that her sister Fubuki was in school, best friends with Psychos, another talented Esper. However, Fubuki was worried about Psychos' dangerous ideologies and her growing power, thus she sealed it away with a kiss. Psychos didn't realise this at the time, thus she became hungry for more power as she felt that she was falling behind and needed it. This led to her messing with none other than God, but we'll come back to that in just a little bit. With the Hero Association being formed, Blast too became a prominent figure as he set out on his mission to learn more about who God is, encountering him in person for the first time whilst battling against Elder Centipede. God was watching over Earth in search of a suitable vessel that he could use. However, he wouldn't have to wait too much longer, as Garou was then expelled from Bang's dojo for his violent behaviour, kickstarting his journey to becoming absolute evil and the world's first God-level threat. But before him came Homeless Emperor, the first known victim of God's manipulation. Bringing us to episode 1, where Saitama was now everyone's favourite caped baldy, being a hero for fun and meeting Genos. It was around here that the House of Evolution took an interest in Saitama. However, Dr. Genus shut down his experiments of creating a limitless being after realising that Saitama had already achieved such a feat naturally. A few days later, Saitama and Genos take the hero exam, with the latter being made S rank but Saitama only getting C rank. Despite this, he destroys a meteor that threatens Z City after both S-class heroes Genos and Metal Knight fail to stop it. Disaster would soon strike again though, with the Deep Sea Kings making their return from deep underwater after all these hundreds of millions of years. Both he and his Sea Folk race though were made extinct, with Saitama killing the king, going up to B-class afterwards. I tell you what, I would not like to live on this earth, because just days later, Shibabawa predicts the end of the world. She could do this using the third eye, an ability Saikos had also researched in the past when she was a schoolgirl, which allowed them to look into the future. It wasn't until we saw her use it though that we learned this future sight power came from God. Shibabawa then dies by choking on a cough sweet, but if you know me, I don't quite believe that. As you'll see later in this video, those that use God's powers in ways that he doesn't quite approve of tend to get killed by him, and I think this is one of those cases. Regardless, the Hero Association immediately begins preparations to somehow deal with this end of the world prophecy. Oh, and Saitama also gets a new rank around about now to reach B-class 63. Anyway, at least the end of the world isn't till a while away, right? We can at least rest for a bit until then, yeah? Oh no, of course. Silly me. Just a couple days later is an alien invasion from none other than Boros, who had finally reached his destination of where his prophesized opponent resided, Saitama. The caped baldy proved to be too much for him though, and Boros is killed. However, notice how in the background we see the moon? That's right, God, who is sealed up there, is watching everything. There's a big problem with this though, and that is, unlike God, 99.5% of you watching are not subscribed to my channel. Like, what the hell, guys? Please, ding that notification bell. Anyway, the destruction of A City by Boros' dark matter thieves meant that Metal Knight could rebuild it and turn it into a practically indestructible fortress. Sometime later, Saitama befriends King and Garou begins his hero hunt, defeating many heroes along the way. However, he soon bumped into Saitama, who had signed up for the Super Fight tournament and was one-shot. Elsewhere, powerful monsters continued to attack, including Elder Centipede, who kidnapped Waganma, the son of a high-ranking executive and sponsor of the Hero Association, Narinki. Metal Knight attempted to follow the monster, but seemingly to no avail. Moving on though, it was time for the Super Fight tournament, but things turned sour when the first ever winner, Goketsu, who was now a Monster Association executive, arrived to try and recruit strong fighters. However, Saitama, who had been disqualified for wearing a disguise and using someone else's name, made light work of him. Across the city, more powerful Monster Association members attacked, recruiting new allies by feeding them monster cells, with their main target being Garou, the hero hunter. At this point, the Monster Association's war on the world had begun to take shape, causing heroes such as Atomic Samurai and his disciples to search for their base. Garou continues hunting heroes and finds himself in a tricky situation with Genos, Bang and Bomb, forcing the monsters to take action and save him, as Elder Centipede creates a distraction, declaring his wish to get revenge on Blast from 2 years prior. Many heroes try to defeat him, but ultimately King lures it away by claiming that Blast is waiting for him, where it's actually Saitama who lands a serious punch, killing it, all whilst Phoenix Man carries Garou away. With all the recent outbreaks of monsters and of course the growing issue of Garou, the Hero Association begin preparations to end this war. Despite this, Narinki, fed up with the perceived lack of urgency to save his son, sends his own personal unit to find and retrieve him, but are easily defeated and captured, ultimately turning into DOS's slaves for battle. battle. As the hero hunter wakes up underground, he's ordered by Monster King Orochi to bring him the head of a hero to prove his loyalty as a monster, with Royal Ripper and Bug God sent to watch over him. However, Garou's got no interest in playing along with their games, as he wants to strike fear into others without resorting to murder, as he believes that should be what a monster is. He sees a young boy called Tario, which he had recently grown close to, getting bullied, as he steps in to help them following his own childhood trauma of being bullied too. Garou saves the kid, but is once again knocked out by Saitama and later loses to Royal Ripper and Bug God, who sense that he's not cut out to be a monster like they are. But during this battle, Garou's body conquers death on multiple occasions, leading him to start the process of breaking his limiter. His loss finds both him and Tario taken back to the Monster Association headquarters. As Tario's being transported to the cell where Waganma is being kept, he meets G5, who just so happened to be carrying the helmet of Metal Knight's battlesuit following the hero's unsuccessful mission to track Elder Centipede. However, the heroes did have some luck in that regard, as they used a small drone to retrace the monster's movements back to its base. Not gonna lie though, just look at the size of this thing. Surely it doesn't take a genius to notice a huge hole in the ground and the tracks that it left behind, right? I could have told you that. It's here though that we're introduced to the Monster Association's most dangerous threats. Threats so powerful they're said to be like pieces of art made by God himself. The Cadres. Garou then wakes up as he recalls what happened, wandering through the Monster Association, alerting the leader Gyoro aka Psychos that he's still alive. He bumps into Royal Ripper on his expedition, who is about to torture Tario, saving the young boy in the process as he destroys the monster effortlessly, displaying his newfound growth in strength. As he tries to get out of there, Garou bumps into more monsters, making light work of them, but things soon become more difficult as he's approached by overgrown Rover firing a blast of energy his way. Garou barely avoided it, but the attack had caused a large earthquake, alerting the attention of Saitama. Tario makes a run for it, leaving Garou to face the dragon level threat alone, only to find out that the true strength of the Monster Association is much more than anything he could have possibly imagined. He takes a point blank range attack and accepts his inevitable death. However, this was just another instance of his body overcoming such a thing, as he was blasted through multiple stories, surviving the impact of it all. Falling through so many floors, Garou found himself in the face of their leader Gyoro once again. She notices Garou's limitless potential and claims that she can raise him to become the most powerful monster. However, he began to break through her psychic restriction using his immense ability to adapt to those around him. In this case, he used Metalbat's fighting spirit to overcome her telekinesis. Garou then attempts to kill her there and then to stop the monster's rampage, but is swiftly brought to a stop as King Orochi is called forth. As their fight ensues, Saitama begins to investigate what on earth all the noise is happening under his apartment. Elsewhere, the Hero Association launched their assault on the base, but due to trust issues they leave Genos, Bomb, Bang and Fubuki off the team. However, King, using his own assigned route, decides to bring them with him. The true reason for this was so they had protection, but it also allowed Bang to come and try and knock some sense into his student. And so, with the first wave of attacks over with, the main act of this war was ready to take shape. Flashy Flash found himself facing off against former members of the ninja village where he was once raised, who had since become disaster level dragon monsters. He made light work of them both, but in the process of all the collapsing rubble around him, he lost the transmitter that Child Emperor had given to all the heroes on the mission. Talking of which, he had located the remains of Metal Knight's robot who had been dismantled and learnt the location of Waganma. After a quick confrontation with Phoenix Man, Child Emperor successfully rescued the young boy, but was then met by none other than G5. He managed to escape, but his luck just continued to get worse, as he was met once again by Phoenix Man, who this time had resurrected from death, reaching a new level of power, much like Garou and Saitama had done before him. In an attempt to fight against this reincarnated bird, Child Emperor used his brave giant mech suit. Their battle ensues, with them eventually bumping into Saitama, where they managed to defeat the monster, alongside the two evil ninjas that fought Flashy Flash, who had come back to life. Talking of coming back to life, elsewhere, after 200 deaths in 30 minutes, Zombie Man finally defeats Pure Blood the Vampire and 30 more monsters, all whilst a My Mask beats DOS and saves the enslaved humans. Many more powerful heroes engage in combat with dangerous monsters, while Saitama, Child Emperor and Waganma make their way back to the surface. Those up top are confused by Saitama's presence and order him to evacuate immediately. He claims that's exactly what he's gonna do, but instead he uses an old monster hole to go straight back down to the base. Meanwhile, Atomic Samurai finds Tario being chased by Black S and contacts Child Emperor about a second hostage situation, and so he heads back in to help. Zombie Man engages in battle with Homeless Emperor, who reveals how he got his powers after being blessed by God one day in the past, moments before he was ready to take his own life. Things would go from bad to worse from here, as not only was Atomic Samurai facing the worst kind of enemy for a hero like him, evil natural water had been set loose. A near indestructible monster with a body of nothing but H2O. Oh, and two little googly eyes. Elsewhere, Saitama encounters Rover and hits him with a punch, causing shockwaves to reverberate throughout the base and the nearby surroundings to be annihilated. The damage was so vast that even Genos, who was waiting for Saitama at home, noticed it. Nyan, witnessing the Caped Baldy's strength, thought there would be an ample time to try and hit him with a sneak attack. However, as soon as his claws proved to be useless, he ran away, stricken with fear about Saitama's true power. Gyoro wonders what on earth all the noise was, and grows concerned at the thought that Rover may have actually been defeated, but they have no time to think too hard about it, as the Tornado of Terror makes her appearance, as Tatsumaki makes light work of Gyoro, realizing that it was nothing more than Psychos' meat puppet. In a desperate attempt to defeat Tatsumaki, Gyoro calls forth King Orochi. However, on his way to save his creator, the monster bumps into Saitama, whose presence alone alerts Orochi that he's not just any ordinary human, and instead takes priority over saving Gyoro. He realized that Saitama was the legendary Ghost Town Horror after noticing that even Rover had run away in fear of Saitama. Thus, every monster cell in Orochi's body told him that Saitama was a perfect sacrifice for his complete resurrection. However, unbeknownst to him, there is no resurrection for Orochi. You see, some time ago, Orochi stumbled upon an ancient mural deep underground that depicted him at the very top, speaking upon his resurrection as God. What he didn't know, though, was that he wasn't looking at the full picture. After a short battle with Saitama, Orochi was defeated, causing the walls around him to collapse in on themselves, revealing that he was nothing more than a pawn in the resurrection of the true God. Back with Gyoro, who was using a tiny flying eye to locate Orochi, realizes that he was defeated before the eye is squashed by Saitama anyway. However, she mistakenly believes that King is the one responsible for all of it. Elsewhere though, he accidentally finds himself defeating a monster disguised as Waganma by stating that he has no hope in following him, as it would only lead to despair. What King meant by this was that he's actually too weak to save the child, so there was no point really following him. However, his immense luck ability kicks in as the King engine activates, causing the monster to believe that he meant following him would end in its immediate death. And so it has a panic attack and dies, leaving King to desperately seek out Saitama for safety. Fubuki battles against DOS, who is once again defeated and forced into leading them to Garou's location. However, she tricks the heroes and summons Rover with a dog whistle, who causes complete destruction inside the base. Flashy Flash begins to sense Saitama approaching, mistaking him for a monster and attacks at top speed. Yet the Caped Baldy just effortlessly dodges any advances he makes. Understanding that Saitama is just quite simply built different, the two team up together and continue to explore the base as Flashy Flash brings Saitama up to speed about what is going on. The pair get lost in the maze-like structure of the base, leading Saitama to just punch his way through, where they encounter a weak monster named Monako, forcing it to show them the way to her boss. This small monster was actually a fragment of Gyoro that had been separated inside its incubator on accident, which then gained sentience. Meanwhile, at Garou's real location, Puri prisoner stumbles upon it, where the hero hunter is sleeping tied up in his chains. However, Garou soon snaps free and easily defeats the hero, where he then bumps into Darkshine. Whilst he does a little bit better, his fate is ultimately the same, as Garou then wakes up mid-battle, putting a swift stop to their brawl, displaying the frightening increase of strength he achieved with his limiter continuing to break. Back on the surface, Nyan, who had now quit the Monster Association after seeing Saitama, attacks the weaker heroes protecting Waganma. He soon finds himself herself in a pretty tricky situation though when the S-Class hero Drive Knight appears to save the day. He reveals that Metal Knight is in fact a traitor and had his robots caught on purpose so that the Monster Association could analyze it for information and weaken the heroes, all part of a long elaborate scheme to eventually take over the world with his own military power. Suddenly G5 appears and attacks the weakened heroes, but they are saved just in the nick of time, this time by Genos, who entered the battle after hearing the noise caused by Saitama. With his help, the injured are quickly evacuated, including Waganma, who is now safe inside of the extraction convoy, meaning Genos can finally join up inside of the base and team up with the rest of the S-Class heroes. At this point though, the Monster Association's most powerful members, the Cadres, had encountered heroes and displayed their frightening power, putting them in an extremely advantageous position to win this war. Thus, for the first time in a long while, the S-Class felt fear. There was hope though, and it was in the form of Tatsumaki. Psychos kept herself hidden deep away underground so that no other association member even knew it existed. This way she could sit back and relax whilst the war took place, using meat puppets to give orders all whilst avoiding Tatsumaki. Hypothetically, it was the safest place on Earth, or so she thought. Quite unbelievably, Tatsumaki sensed Psychos' location immediately by intercepting her psychic signal. This meant that she could forcefully bind Psychos and bring her up to Tatsumaki's location. The panic swiftly begins to settle in as Psychos calls for Rover's help. However, just like with Orochi before, no luck. Rover had been beaten and subsequently tamed by Fubuki Bomb and Bang. Things just continued to go from bad to worse for Psychos, as she realised that Saitama and Flashy Flash were also closing in on the inner sanctum. With no choice but to reveal herself and fight, Psychos drank an elixir which boosts her psychic power as Tatsumaki drags her up through the ground as their battle begins. Elsewhere, King finds Tario, but believes him to be a shape-shifting monster just like the last child he met was. Thus, he menacingly declares that the monster is despicable for disguising its true form in favour of a sneak attack. What King didn't realise, however, was that a completely transparent monster was stood behind Tario the entire time, causing it to flee in fear of King's immense skill to notice its presence. The poor monster doesn't get too far, however, as Orochi's heart soon ate it in an attempt to regenerate its body and return to his former glory as the Monster King. And so, after a quick little mukbang, Orochi makes his way up to Psychos and forcefully fuses with her, corrupting her mind with his power. And so, Sairochi is born. With a newfound level of power, Sairochi turned the tide against Tatsumaki by switching the inside with the outside of her barrier. This meant that she couldn't disable it, and had to endure the strength of not just her own power putting pressure on herself, but the ever-increasing amount of Sairochi's. However, Tatsumaki got a lucky break as elsewhere in the association base, Saitama destroyed some of Orochi's cells, causing pain to the main body. More good news soon came when Tatsumaki got word from King that he was with the second hostage. This meant that the Tornado of Terror no longer had to hold back. She began protecting her allies by encasing everyone inside a psychic barrier, airlifting them to safety from the collapsing base. This cut short the battle between Garou and Darkshine, who was reminded of his childhood trauma. With all her teammates now safe, she could start to have some fun. This began with her using her power to trap Sairochi inside a fortress crafted from a large chunk of Z City. She had no luck though, as Sairochi simply broke free. You see, in the merging process, Psychos got a lot larger. However, her size wasn't the only thing that had grown either, as too did her power, with Sairochi letting out a large blast visible from space. Everybody was confused at where this incredible power had just suddenly come from, but things soon made sense as she revealed that God had visited Psychos during the final moments of her merge with Orochi. He preyed upon her weak mental state and turned her into his pawn, where in return, Psychos would be blessed with the crazy amounts of power we see. During the onslaught, Tatsumaki ensured that King had escaped with the final hostage. Meanwhile, the Tornado of Terror prevented a country-sized tsunami from striking. The battle between these two amazing espers caused the scenery around them to make those watching wonder if this was the end of the world. Suddenly, Tatsumaki vanished and, much to Sairochi's surprise, popped up inside her own breast. I am pretty certain that Murata just drew this with one hand. Nonetheless, Tatsumaki then went on to twist her up from the inside, with victory seemingly assured. However, her opponent lived and swiftly stabbed Tatsumaki, overloading her with psychic energy, badly injuring her in the process. In spite of this, she was saved by none other than Genos, giving Tatsumaki just enough time to finish saving everyone below her. With that done, she could turn all of her attention to the foe in front of her. Thus, the Tornado of Terror began manipulating the entirety of Z City, twisting it up until Sairochi was moments from death. However, in the distance was God upon the moon, watching over the battle, which is when suddenly Tatsumaki began overexerting herself, coughing up blood, allowing Sairochi to make an escape. The S-class hero wasn't gonna let her get away with this, and so she unleashed a large-scale barrier to keep her in close range. Whilst the monster believed they had succeeded in killing Tatsumaki, it turned out to be none other than a decoy. Things finally began to look up for the heroes once more as Drive Knight entered the fray, engaging in a large-scale dogfight aided by other powerful heroes. After a long, hard-fought battle, Orochi and Saigos are separated. Somehow, still conscious, Tatsumaki digs up a large spear spanning for miles to finally kill the Monster King with. On the other hand, Saitama, Flashy Flash and Monako had been trapped underneath all the rubble looking for Flash's sword. In doing so, the three of them come across an extremely rare artifact, one of God's transmitter cubes. As they stare into the large hole created by Tatsumaki, they are met with nothingness. Just complete darkness. However, what was truly on the other side was God's dimension, who could now communicate with the trio that had touched the cube. You see, they had been warped there upon discovering the cube. As God tries to lure them into accepting his manipulative deal for power in his desperate search for an avatar, they are saved by Blast. The number one S-class hero explains the purpose of the cube they had found and how dangerous it truly was, quickly teleporting them back to their own dimension where the battle with Tatsumaki continues. She fires her large spear deep underground into the Monster Association headquarters, narrowly missing Saitama as she senses a dimensional shift caused by Blast's appearance. The hero's victory was short-lived, however, as the cadres began their terrifying onslaught, decimating those unlucky enough to get in their way. Elsewhere, Genos begins to feel the results of his battle with Sairochi as he's exceeded his limits and is moments from self-destructing. However, Fubuki stands up to save him, using her telekinesis to suppress the thermal notion and cool him down. She succeeds, but in turn is vastly weakened from using too much of her own power. She tries to stop her sister from heading back out into battle, worried that she would die. However, it's no use. Tatsumaki continues to help her allies against the cadres, only to find herself in trouble yet again against Fiora Ugly. Thankfully, Genos and Bang come to her rescue. This causes the two monsters, Fiora Ugly and Gums, to fight each other, resulting in the death of the latter as Ugly emerges from within the monster's body, taking on a brand new form after having its body dissolved by stomach acid. As the Tatsumaki rescue squad make their retreat, they are chased by a swarm of black sperm, forcing Tatsumaki to use the very little amount of power that she had left to restrain them. Elsewhere though, the other heroes are not so lucky. Black sperm continues to split until it becomes a sea of tiny monsters, causing havoc across the battlefield. Furthermore, Homer's Emperor watches on in glee as he states that all is how the heavens willed it to be, adding further subtle foreshadowing that God has been manipulating the events on Earth for a very long time, as we see the moon in the distance. Things take a turn for the worse next, as Garou enters the battlefield whilst his appearance is unrecognisable with his monstrous new form. However, his murderous intent is unmistakable. The two brothers, Bang and Bomb, immediately engage in a fierce battle with Garou. With each fist that connected, Bang's words for his student got through. He declared how he would save Garou, and once he did, he vowed to retire as a hero and focus on being master and disciple once again. Such a promise caused Garou's monsterification to begin cracking. Nonetheless, their battle went on until Garou landed a slight graze on Bang, which was enough to defeat him. Elsewhere, the new and improved Fiora Ugly goes on a killing spree, killing two members of the Council of Swordsmen and badly injuring the leader Nichiri, who passes down the legendary Sunblade to Atomic Samurai. Fiora Ugly then finds himself on the other hand of a powerful punch from the newly formed Golden Spur. This was the result of multiple black sperm cells merging together to increase their power. Genos begins to drag Tatsumaki's limp body across the ground with his mouth after the two were overpowered by an army of black sperm cells as a loud heartbeat could be heard in the distance. This didn't stop the small army of monsters tearing Genos apart limb by limb though, and so everything looked hopeless for him. But then King arrived. Knowing that the Hero Association's strongest fighter stood before them, all of the remaining cadre prepared for the fight of their lives. This included Homeless Emperor, Golden Sperm, who had just suffered a severed arm from Atomic Samurai's powerful Sunblade, and the newly emerged Evil Natural Water. Oh, and let's not forget the thousands upon thousands of smaller sperm cells. What is One Punch Man? Anyway, Homeless Emperor makes the first move, declaring that he will test how the strongest would dodge his attack. However, the unexpected occurs. King politely points out that the ground beneath Homeless Emperor was uneven and dangerous. Such an observation frightens the dragon level threat, as he believes King is so much stronger than him that he is actually the one being tested. As Homeless Emperor begins to panic, he's ambushed by Zombie Man. He begs for the aid of other cadre, but is met with silence, as the others are frozen with caution by King's presence. Child Emperor explains that all they have to do now is attack the cadre from both sides to line them up for King to unleash his final killer move. That was their only win condition. Realizing the danger they're in, a total of 54 trillion sperm cells combine to create platinum sperm. Oh, this is actually a really serious moment. As this is happening, Zombie Man confronts Homeless Emperor about the legitimacy of his story about God, and demands he tell him everything. But before the cadre could even have time to spill the beans, he sees a monstrous figure appear in the distance, scaling the moon. It was God. He took back the power he gifted Homeless Emperor, and in doing so, stripped him of his life, causing his body to melt away. His final words were calling out to God, causing Zombie Man to begin wondering if he really does exist after all. Furo Ugly stumbles upon Bang's beaten up body and goes in for the kill. However, the hero's words of encouragement begin to resonate with Garou once more, who speed blitzes the monster before he can kill his former sensei. With an overwhelming sense of emotion overcoming him, Garou rushes into the midst of battle as King finally resorts to using his ultimate purgatory Hellfire Burst Wave Cannon. Garou rushes towards Platinum Sperm and takes out the fusion with one punch. Evil Natural Water is also unlucky enough to find himself on the end of a brutal beatdown. With all of this happening in less than a single second, the heroes watching on mistake King to be the one responsible for saving them from the cadres. Suddenly, a portal opens as Saitama, Flashy Flash and Monako come stumbling out, much to King's relief. Garou stares down Saitama as the caped Baldy swiftly rushes past him, seeing how badly beat up Genos is. Learning of his students' sacrificial actions to protect Tatsumaki, Saitama congratulates Genos for growing stronger in his heart. Flashy Flash joins the fight, but to no avail. Suddenly, Platinum Sperm returns, causing damage to both Garou and the S-Class hero. The three begin a large-scale fight at speeds so fast it creates a geometric structure visible in the sky above the city. The hero hunter then begins to master his own ultimate martial arts technique, which he dubs the Monster Calamity God Slayer Fist, stating that something as unreliable as God would be crushed by his hands. Yeah, I'm sure that'll age well. Meanwhile, deep underground where God's mural was buried, a new giant centipede monster called Sage Centipede emerges, whilst Evil Natural Water morphs with the ocean, becoming the fittingly named Evil Ocean Water. As Garou bursts through Platinum Sperm at high speeds, he explodes and sends tiny particles of light glistening in the sky as suddenly Blast appears before Tatsumaki. As she opens her eyes, Blast tells her that he can give her his power. These words quickly resonate with her as she thinks back to what Blast said the day he saved her. When the time comes, don't go expecting someone to save you. The man standing before her turned out to be none other than God, who, after watching her battle with Sairochi, tried to make her his new avatar. But with his cover blown, he resorts back to the drawing board, with the real Blast quickly appearing, proud of how strong Tatsumaki had become to resist God's manipulation. He entrusts her to King's care as he head back to where he came from, to provide backup to his Guardians of the Galaxy pals to help defeat God. Sage Centipede then erupts from underground, declaring that he and Evil Ocean Water have been sent to defeat the one known as the Fist that went against God, aka Saitama, who just so happens to show up and one-shot Evil Ocean Water with a single serious punch. This causes a huge disruption in the sea as he splits it in half, forcing Saitama to surf to safety using a large carrier vessel. Garou tells the helicopter housing Tario to get the hell out of here, throwing them 500 meters away into a safety net as he then teams up with Metal Bat to take down Sage Centipede. Garou draws it high up into the sky where he then karate chops the entire monster in half, killing it instantly. Elsewhere, a My Mask tries to kill Monako, who is attempting to resuscitate Flashy Flash following his battle with Platinum Sperm and Garou. However, the monster is saved by Saitama surfing by on his ship. The new Blizzard group then appears, with me looking incredibly respectfully, if I may add. Meanwhile, Saitama parks up his boat and heads out into battle against Garou. With most of the S-Class heroes defeated, Garou was all but finished on his journey to become absolute evil. Yet there was still one thing bothering him. He just couldn't quite put his finger on it yet. As Saitama stood before him, complaining about how his day had been terrible and how right now he would have no problem just obliterating the entire planet due to his bad mood. The pressure alone emitting from Saitama shook Garou. However, Saitama had no interest in fighting if it wasn't against a monster. Angered, Garou goes in for an attack. Upon feeling the power of Saitama's fist though, he finally realizes who it is he's facing up against. It's here that Garou understood that in order to become absolute evil, he had to defeat Saitama. Thus, their insane battle ensues as they launch and attack at each other at breakneck speed. Garou attempts a full-strength karate chop, but the impact simply just shatters his own arm. The rage he felt contributed to Garou's body undergoing a more severe monsterification. However, Tario, who had found his way back to the battlefield, was there to witness this transformation, with the little boy telling Garou that in reality, he is a hero. Anytime he was in danger, it'd always be Garou that saved him. He tried talking sense into him, but Garou was too stubborn to listen to the young boy's logic, as he was committed to ruling the world with terror. Saitama then teases the hero hunter, launching him into the distance so that they can continue their battle in safety. However, before doing so, the caped body reassures Tario that he will simply stop Garou and not kill him. This is because, deep down, Saitama knows that Garou wants to do things for the right reasons. He wants to be a hero, thus he teases him about it. Garou attacks, sending Saitama flying through building blocks, destroying them in the process. However, it just further backed up Saitama's claim of Garou doing good, as he accidentally freed a group of office workers trapped underground. Garou's monsterification continued along with his anger, as the hero hunter then sprouted some wings. With his newfound strength, he destroyed half a volcano, but once again this just inadvertently saved more lives. He grew more arms and struck Saitama into the ground with all his might, once again saving the day as he stopped a plane full of people from drowning. However, the battle between these two limitless beings started to have a negative effect after all. In another dimension, Blast and his Guardians of the Galaxy crew noticed that the Earth's magnetic and gravitational fields were going crazy, causing a spatial distortion to form a hole inside the dimensional seal holding God. This allowed him to break through, even if just partially. And so, as Saitama seemingly defeated Garou when his mentality was at his weakest, God appeared to prey upon him. He disguised himself as Bang and offered the hero hunter power to complete his goal. However, much like Tatsumaki, Garou refused. In spite of this, he still ever so briefly touched the hand of God, becoming his new avatar. Thus, Cosmic Garou was born, becoming the world's first God-level threat. With this new form came the knowledge of the flow of all energy and the behavior of all forces across the universe. With just a single punch, Garou created a nuclear explosion. As Psychos watched on from the distance, she immediately recognized that this was the divine power granted only by God. Using his talent to instantly copy his opponent, Garou entered Saitama mode and unleashed a flurry of consecutive normal punches. The two were equal. However, Garou wanted to prove to the world that he was absolute evil, thus he let loose a whole ass gamma ray burst. Suddenly, all the heroes were frozen with fear as the monstrous cosmic fear Garou stood before them. As they fell to the ground, suffering from the cosmic radiation poisoning, Bang tried one final time to talk some sense into his student, believing that he must have been being controlled, and that this isn't something Garou would normally do. Though the hero hunter says that that isn't true, Blast shows up once more, confirming Bang's hypothesis, revealing that God is controlling him, and that with each attack Garou produces, the entire planet is at risk of being wiped out. In spite of this, Garou just continues his pursuit to become the symbol of fear, which is when Genos flies in with a headbutt. It does nothing, causing Blast to launch an attack of his own. He's believed to have trapped Garou within a portal, however the hero hunter had already copied Blast's technique and escaped by creating his own. Realizing that he needed more power to achieve his goal, he conducts a plan to force Saitama into going all out. That way, Garou would be able to copy and refine the Caped Baldy's full strength. Thus, he picks Genos up and pierces him straight through the heart, ripping out his core, killing him instantly. Saitama, who had shown up just a fraction too late as he was still recovering from being hit with the gamma ray burst, stood there in disbelief, witnessing his best friend's lifeless body. Garou threw Genos' core at him, which is when Saitama snapped. He unleashed a serious punch, which Garou copied, resulting in serious punch squared. An attack that would have for sure destroyed the Earth had it not been for Blast teleporting them both to space. The subsequent explosion caused by their clash of fists sent them flying to the surface of one of Jupiter's moons, Io, leaving behind a huge gap in the galaxy. Meanwhile, the spine of God could be witnessed trapped within the moon, watching everything unfold before his very eyes. Whilst Garou tried showing off his immense power, Saitama just ripped up the entire surface of the moon, annihilating it with just one hand. As the hero hunter loses all sense of direction, Saitama unleashes an omnidirectional serious punch from all angles. That was the moment that Garou realized fighting such an opponent was unfair. He finally got a taste of an opponent that was limitlessly strong. Even Saitama had now begun copying Garou's martial arts moves instantaneously. Suddenly, Garou's life was in serious danger, as with each attack, Saitama continued to grow more and more until he reached a point where there was no longer anybody left in existence that could measure the level of strength that he had reached. This was made all the more clear when, with just a single sneeze, Saitama removed Jupiter's entire gaseous layer, leaving behind just its core. Whilst Garou is simply stunned at the monster that Saitama had become, he has one trick left up his sleeve, as he teleports the no longer caped Baldy to the surface of the sun. Nonetheless, with just a simple fart, Saitama caught back up to Garou, with the two plummeting back to Earth. The final punch had broken through the monstification and brought Garou back to his senses. As he saw Tario lying there lifeless due to his own doing, he realized what he had done wrong. The one person that he wanted to save was now the one that he had killed. Thus, Garou instructed Saitama to copy his next moves, as if there was anyone that could replicate the power of God without his help, it would be him. Talking of God, he caught wind of what Garou was trying to do, thus began stripping him of his power, much like he did Homeless Emperor, turning the hero hunter's body to salt this time in the process until he ceased to exist. However, he was too late. Saitama had done it. Through what can only be described as, I'm not even sure that makes sense, to be honest, science, Saitama began travelling back in time by doing some particle shenanigans. I don't know, if I'm honest. As he saw small windows of the past unfold before him, Saitama jumped back to when Garou first entered his cosmic fear mode, defeating him with a single punch. Suddenly, the naked time-traveling Saitama and the Saitama of the past merged together as one to stop any breaches in the multiversal timeline. As a result of this, Saitama forgot everything, and the credit of defeating Garou was passed on to Blast. However, he still had the core of the dead Genos. Thus, when the new Genos plugged himself into it, he was met with the flood of information that had happened in the alternate timeline, confirming the multiversal hypothesis indeed existed. Elsewhere, the voice of the alternate past Garou could be heard, telling Tario to stand up. What he saw before him was then a faint image of Garou smiling, knowing that the young boy was safe before crumbling into nothingness. Whilst Tario just rubbed his eyes, believing that it must have been a dream, he hears voices in the distance, as this timeline's Garou faces a great beatdown by the heroes surrounding him. Metal Bat calls for them all to stop. However, a My Masker believes that Garou deserves to be executed as they would do any other monster. However, before he could do such a thing, Tario appears to stop them. At the same time, the King engine begins, making everyone shit themselves. Thus, Bang, King and Saitama give Garou a second chance as he quickly escapes the battlefield to safety. Miraculously, Metal Knight then appears after detecting the nuclear blast caused by Garou. Thus, he begins decontamination procedures for everyone infected with the radiation poisoning. Elsewhere, Saitama tells Genos that they need to get him to Dr. Kusuno to fix up his arms and legs. That way, they can begin searching for what's left of their apartment. Of course though, the threat of God still remains, as Seaman Fubuki pulls up and unconscious cycles from the rubble, peering into her mind. What she saw was the source of her madness. What she saw was God. Now, when the time comes, I'll be sure to make a part 2, so be sure to ding that notification bell and leave a like because you won't want to miss out. In the meantime though, you could probably click on this video right here.